QTWM39.
Welcome everybody to another edition of Quick Trivia with Mike. It's that weekly game show right here on channel 955 where we test your knowledge of older history, maybe some contemporary facts, always what I think is basically some relatively interesting trivia. We're having a lot of fun with the show. I hope you are as well. I'm your host and quiz master, Mike Brever. Last week we really focused on some holiday trivia. We talked about 3 movies that have become famous because of their replay during the holidays. We're going to be continuing that tradition today with a couple of interesting trivia questions that also have at least a shirt-tail relation to holiday trivia. As you know, we always begin the show by giving you the answers to last week's 3 questions. Then we go off and we take a look at 3 new questions to test your ability to find the answer to some of this trivia. Let's get right into it, shall we? The first one that we looked at last week, we were talking about trivia related to A Christmas Carol. That wonderful, wonderful story by Charles Dickens, written in the 1840s, that really looked at Victorian England and some of the customs and traditions that they were doing at the time, and the realization that people more well off really do have an obligation to serve their fellow man, to make their life a little bit better. Just a wonderful, wonderful story. Ebenezer Scrooge on Christmas Eve, visited by 4 ghosts, his former partner and then the ghost of Christmas past, present, and Christmas yet to come. Becomes a changed man, changes the life of his employee, Bob Cratchit, and Bob Cratchit's family because of the new generosity that he has found from the visits of the spirits. You know, one of the amazing things about A Christmas Carol is how many different people have played Ebenezer Scrooge over the years. Just a partial list. Alistair Sim, George C. Scott, Bill Murray, Michael Caine, Patrick Stewart, Reginald Owen, Jim Carrey, Lionel Barrymore, Albert Finney. 2 of my favorites, of course, Scrooge McDuck and Mr. Magoo, all played Ebenezer Scrooge. And of course, locally, you know that the Milwaukee Rep has had a tradition of hosting the Christmas Carol at the Pabst Theater. It's coming up close on half a century now that they've been doing that. In my younger days, before I was married and had children of my own, I always took my nieces and nephews to see the Christmas Carol. Just a wonderful, wonderful rendition that they do. My favorite actor playing Scrooge from the Milwaukee Rep was a gentleman by the name of James Pickering. You actually still hear his voice once in a while. He does voiceover work for Milwaukee PBS, my former employer. Just a little bit of trivia about A Christmas Carol. We did ask you, though, that as Christmas Carol was being written by Charles Dickens, he changed his mind in several ways about the narrative. I told you about how he would take a nightly walk almost 20 miles over the 6-week period that it took him to write the Christmas Carol. He really worked out the script in his mind as he was taking these walks. I told you that Tiny Tim did not always have the name Tiny Tim as as it was working through the many alliterations of the book, Charles Dickens changed his mind a couple of times. And I asked you, what was the original name of Tiny Tim meant to be? The answer, of course, was Little Fred. Charles Dickens really liked the name Fred. And as some of you pointed out in your answers to me this week, there actually was a family tie in the Dickens family to the name Fred. Charles Dickens liked the name Fred so much that even when he changed the name to Tiny Tim, he kept the name Fred in the story. His nephew is named Fred, and that's how he kept it alive. So Little Fred was the original name of Tiny Tim, and that was the answer to question number 1. Question number 2 last week on our holiday trivia. We looked at another very, very famous holiday movie, a standard by today's television rankings. It's a Wonderful Life. That wonderful Frank Capra movie starring Jimmy Stewart. First came out in 1946. You know, there was a lot of post-World War II references in the movie. And in fact, much of the movie occurred during World War II. And so there are references to George Bailey's brother being in the military, and the fact that George Bailey was exempt because of a bad ear, an ear that became bad because he saved his brother's life when they were both youth, sledding down a hill, and his brother fell into a river, but George dove in and saved him. In 1990, the film was designated as culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant and added to the National Film Registry of the Library of Congress. Frank Capra often said that It's a Wonderful Life was his own favorite movie that he produced, and he had his entire family watch the movie with him every holiday season. We shared with you that it was not necessarily a tremendous blockbuster financially. In fact, in its original release, it lost money, about $750,000. It also was not a huge success in terms of Academy Awards. The only Academy Award it won was for the new technique that it used in the creation of snow for on the set. Previous to that, movie producers took soap flakes, and they would just throw them in a fan, and the fan would blow around the soap flakes, and that made the snow. Frank Capra and his crew came up with a new way of creating snow for cinema, and that's what actually won an Academy Award. It is really thought that there would have been more Academy Awards in line for It's a Wonderful Life if Frank Capra had waited another 2 or 3 months for the release. He rushed it into theaters in December of 1946 because of the Academy Awards. He thought there was an opportunity to really reap a harvest of the Academy Awards. Didn't happen. The theory is that if he would have waited to next year, his competition would have been Miracle on 34th Street. And the theory was that It's a Wonderful Life would have sized up very well and won some awards of its own. As we know now, however, it only won the one Academy Award for the technique that they used in the creation of snow for the movie. The story really focuses on a relationship between George Bailey and his guardian angel, Clarence. Clarence Oddbody, a character played by the wonderful Henry Travers, comes down to earth and shows George Bailey what his life would have, or what the world would have been if he had never been born. Through a series of misfortunes that occur on Christmas Eve, George Bailey is actually contemplating suicide. And the good angel second class, Clarence Oddbody, is sent down by the Archangel Gabriel to try to turn George's life around and let him see the truth. Of course, by the end of the movie, it does. All is well by the end. As I explained to you last week, Capricorn really came into play with the corny ending. Everybody loves each other. Everybody is singing a song at the end. George's life is turned around financially because of the generosity of the town that he has worked so hard to help during his entire life. So those he helped come back to help him. And of course, Clarence earns his wings at the end, as we know, because a bell rings as George taps it with his pipe on the Christmas tree. And as you know, every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings. We asked you, what was Clarence's profession before he died and became an angel second class? What was it that Clarence did in his life? The answer is that he was a clockmaker. Clarence Oddbody, played by Henry Travers, was a clockmaker before he passed away. Question number 2 from last week. Our third question to you, we talked about Miracle on 34th Street, released in 1947, and actually won many Academy Awards because it wasn't up against the stiff competition of It's a Wonderful Life and other things that came out, like The Best Year of Our Lives, which actually came out in 1946 as well. Miracle on 34th Street, starring Maureen O'Hara, John Payne, Edmund Gwenn as St. Nicholas, who, as you know the story, believes himself to be the one and the only St. Nicholas. One of the main storylines in the movie involves the relationship between Edmund Gwenn and a very young Natalie Wood. Natalie Wood plays the daughter of Maureen O'Hara, who is, somewhat cynical about Christmas and about the goodness in people's hearts. And that has carried on down to her young daughter, Natalie Wood. John Payne and Edmund Gwenn really enter into a pact. Edmund Gwenn, as St. Nicholas, takes it upon himself to restore the holiday spirit to a young Natalie Wood, if John Payne can restore the holiday spirit to Maureen O'Hara. A situation occurs in the middle of the movie, which really typifies the transition in Natalie Wood's character. John Payne takes the young Natalie Wood to Macy's department store to see Santa Claus, and she reveals to John that she does not believe in Santa Claus. Well, of course, John is going to take it upon himself to try to prove that that's not the case, and he takes her anyways. While Natalie is observing, Edmund Gwenn, in character as St. Nicholas, is listening to the Christmas wishes of little boys and girls. This movie is heavily influenced by post-World War II. A young girl, a Dutch girl actually, comes and sits on Santa's lap and does not speak any English. She speaks in Dutch. Natalie Wood observes this, and Edmund Gwenn is able to speak back to her in Dutch, and Natalie Wood begins to question her doubts. She's now wondering if maybe Edmund Gwenn is the one, the only, the real St. Nicholas, because he can talk to all children in their native language. I asked you, what was it that the little Dutch girl asked of St. Nicholas when he said, "And what would you like for Christmas?" And of course, he said it in Dutch as well. Did she want a dollhouse, whatever? Well, of course, the little girl is a refugee from war-torn Europe, and she's been taken in by a family here in New York, and she's brought to see Santa by the mother of that family. And the little girl responds in Dutch, the answer to your trivia question: nothing. All I want is to stay with this nice lady. So there you have it. The three questions, or the three answers to our questions. It was, in fact, nothing. All I want for Christmas is to stay with this nice lady. Clarence was, in fact, a clockmaker, and the original name of Tiny Tim was Little Fred. We had several of you call in. These I don't think were necessarily the easiest questions, especially because of the little Dutch girl. One of our players revealed that they speak German, and they were able to watch this sequence and interpret because there's great similarities between the Dutch language and German, neighboring countries. People went to great lengths to try to answer these questions this week. We had two players get all three questions correct. Sandra Meyer and Teresa Sundberg. We actually had a third who had all three questions correct as well, Kelvin Schrader. But Kelvin actually gave me two answers to what the little Dutch girl said. He said, first of all, my mother will provide me with anything I want, and nothing, all I want is to stay with this nice lady. And Kelvin unfortunately said, if I had to choose between one of those, I'm going to go with the first. My mother will provide me with anything. Unfortunately, that knocked Kelvin out of the winner's circle this week, but Sandra and Teresa are competing for the title. How do we determine who wins? Well, we have bumper music at the beginning and end of our show. Identifying that bumper music is how we break a tie. If two or more people get the same number of questions correct, who can answer the music? I encourage you to listen to the music at the end of the show to see if you can identify that music, because it could be important when you play next week. Last week's music, The Times They Are A-Changing by Bob Dylan, released as the title track of his 1964 album of the same name. Dylan wrote the song as a deliberate attempt to create an anthem for the changing times of the 1960s, a time of really societal unrest and upheaval, real change coming. It was influenced by Irish and Scottish ballads as he wrote it. It originally was released as a 45 single in Britain in 1965. It reached number 9 on the UK singles chart. The song was not released as a single in the United States, but it's truly become an anthem, if you will, one of the most popular songs of Bob Dylan. It's been re-recorded by many different artists. Nina Simone, Josephine Baker, The Byrds, The Seekers, Peter, Paul and Mary, Tracy Chapman, Simon and Garfunkel, The Beach Boys, Joan Baez, Phil Collins, Billy Joel, Bruce Springsteen, Burl Ives, among many others. So there you have it. Who got the music right? Who identified the bumper music last week? Teresa Sundberg. Welcome back to the winner's circle for the second week in a row, Teresa. It had been almost 2 months since you'd been in the winner's circle. Now you're the champion 2 weeks in a row. Congratulations.
Some people have a deep, abiding respect for the natural beauty that was once this country. And some people don't. People start pollution. People can stop it.
Let's move on to this week's questions, shall we? We're staying somewhat on our holiday theme, but some of the topics are a little bit more stretched than that. But there is a holiday significance to all of them. We're going to start with one of the most famous entertainers of all time, Bing Crosby. Harry Lillis Crosby Jr., commonly known as Bing Crosby, Born May 3rd, 1903, passed away on October 14th, 1977. Many of you know the story of his passing. Before we get into the trivia, playing golf in Spain, played 18 holes, was walking back up to the clubhouse after the holes. Many of you know that Bing Crosby loved golf. It was a true passion of his. Dropped dead of a heart attack right on the spot. The story is that he was dead before he hit the ground. His heart must have almost exploded. I guess if you gotta go and you're one of the greatest entertainers of all time, go doing something that you love. And I think that's what could be said about him. Bing Crosby really was one of the first, not one of the first, he was the first multimedia star. Crosby was a leader in record sales, radio ratings, and motion picture gross revenue from 1930 to 1954, a remarkable 25-year run atop the charts on virtually everything in the entertainment business. He made over 70 feature films and recorded more than 1,600 different songs. His early career coincided with recording innovations, fortunately for him, that allowed him to develop an intimate singing style that influenced many male singers who followed him, including the great Perry Como, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Dick Haymes, Elvis Presley, and even John Lennon. Yank magazine said that he was the person who had done the most for the morale of overseas servicemen during World War II. In 1948, American polls declared him the most admired man alive, ahead of Jackie Robinson and Pope Pius XII. Also in 1948, Music Digest estimated that his recordings filled more than half of the 80,000 weekly hours allocated to recorded radio music. Crosby also won Academy Awards for some of his movies. Crosby influenced the development of the post-war recording industry after seeing a demonstration of German broadcast quality reel-to-reel tape recording brought to America by John T. Mullen. He invested $50,000, a lot of money today, but a lot of money back in those days, in a California electronics company called Ampex to build copies. He then convinced ABC to allow him to tape his shows. He became the first performer to pre-record his radio shows and master his commercial recordings onto magnetic tape. Through the medium of recording, he constructed his radio programs with the same directorial tools that were used in motion pictures. The editing, the retaking, the rehearsing, the time shifting. He brought all of that work to radio as well. In addition to his work with early audio tape recording, he helped to finance the development of videotape. He bought television stations, he bred racehorses, and co-owned the Pittsburgh Pirates baseball team. One of the greatest compliments I can think of was given to Bing Crosby by Michael Douglas, famed son of Kirk Douglas. Wonderful actor, a great producer as well and director. Michael Douglas commented in a 1975 interview, "During my days in the Navy in World War II, I remember walking the streets of Calcutta, India on the coast. It was a lonely night, so far from my home and from my new wife, Gwen. I needed something to lift my spirits. As I passed a Hindu sitting on the corner of a street, I heard something surprisingly familiar. I came back to see the man playing one of those old Victrolas, like those of RCA with the horn speaker. The man was listening to Bing Crosby sing Accentuate the Positive. I stopped and smiled in grateful acknowledgement. The Hindu nodded and smiled back. The whole world knew and loved Bing Crosby." Of course, you know, he had wonderful, wonderful specials on television and things like that. You know, one of his great collaborations that really helped him become famous was his movie collaborations with Bob Hope. All the Road 2 movies that the two of them did, it really entertained audiences for decades. And in many ways, although they were lighthearted comedies, they really honed the acting chops of those two great Hollywood entertainers. My question to you is that there were 2 sets of films, 4 films in their entirety, that could be said to be sequels of each other, based around holiday themes. What are those 4 films? Again, 2 separate sequences of 2 films each. Sequels that Bing Crosby did. Holiday films. What are those 4 films that Bing Crosby did? 2 originals and 2 sequels. Question number 1. Question number 2. Going off in a whole nother direction completely. We're going to take a look at children's literature and a shirt-tail relationship to Christmas. We're going to look at Theodore Seuss Geisel, commonly known as Dr. Seuss. Born March 2nd, 1904, died September 24th, 1991. He was an American children's author, political cartoonist, illustrator, poet, animator, screenwriter, and filmmaker. Many of you didn't know he was a filmmaker, did you? He's known for his work writing and illustrating more than 60 books under the pen name of Dr. Seuss. Geisel adopted the name Dr. Seuss as an undergraduate at Dartmouth College and as a graduate student at Lincoln College in Oxford. He left Oxford in 1927 to begin his career as an illustrator and cartoonist for Vanity Fair, Life, and various other publications. He also worked as an illustrator for advertising campaigns. He published his first children's book. I bet many of you didn't know what the first one was. We all know Horton Hears a Who and Green Eggs and Ham. His first children's book was And to Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street, published in 1937. During World War II, he took a brief hiatus from children's literature to illustrate political cartoons. And he also worked in the animation and film department of the United States Army, where he wrote, produced, or animated many productions, both live action and, of course, animated, including Designed for Death, for which he won the 1947 Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature. After the war, Dr. Seuss returned to writing children's books, writing classics like If I Ran the Zoo, Horton Hears a Who, If I Ran the Circus, The Cat in the Hat, who can forget that, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and, of course, Green Eggs and Ham. Published over 60 books in his career, which has spawned numerous adaptations, including 11 television specials, 5 feature films, a Broadway musical, and 4 television series. Geisel won the Lewis Carroll Shelf Award in 1958 for Horton Hatches the Egg, and again in 1961 for And to Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street. Geisel's birthday, March 2nd, has been adopted as the annual date for National Read Across America Day, an initiative on reading created by the National Education Association. Dr. Seuss made a point of not beginning to write his stories with a moral in mind. His belief was that kids can see a moral coming a mile off. You don't have to hit them over the head with it. He was not against writing about issues, however. He said that there was inherent moral in any story. And he actually remarked that he was subversive as heck. Dr. Seuss wrote most of his book in anapestic tetrameter, a poetic meter employed by many poets of the English literary canon that is often suggested as one of the reasons that Dr. Seuss' writing was so well received. Anapestic tetrameter consists of 4 rhythmic units called anapests, each composed with 2 weak syllables followed by 1 strong syllable, commonly called the beat. Often the first weak syllable is omitted, or an additional weak syllable is added at the end. An example of this can be found in Dr. Seuss's Yertle the Turtle, from Yertle the Turtle and Other Stories. My question to you that has a shirt-tail holiday theme: there is a correlation between Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas and the monster Frankenstein. What is the correlation? What is the relationship between How the Grinch Stole Christmas and the monster Frankenstein? Question number 2. Question number 3. Still a shirt-tail relationship to the holidays, but now a little bit more disconnected. We're going to go back to the 9th century, the 1800s. We're going to take a look at Charlemagne, literally in English, Charles the Great. Born April 2nd in the year 748. Passed away on January 28th in the year 814. He was actually numbered Charles I, King of the Franks, from 768 until his death, and he was King of the Lombards from 774 until his death. He was Emperor of the Romans from 800 until his death in 814. During the Middle Ages, he united the majority of Western and Central Europe. He was the first recognized emperor to rule from Western Europe since the fall of the Western Roman Empire around 3 centuries earlier. The expanded Frankish state that Charlemagne founded is called the Carolingian Empire. The Carolingian Empire. He actually was later canonized a saint by Antipope Pascal III. Charlemagne was the eldest son of Pepin, the Short, and Bertrada of Leon. Born before their canonical marriage, he became king of the Franks in 768 upon his father's death, initially as co-ruler with his brother Carloman I, until the latter's death in 771. As a sole ruler, he continued his father's policy towards the papacy and became its protector, removing the Lombards from power in northern Italy and leading to an incursion in Muslim Spain. He campaigned against the Saxons in his east, Christianizing them upon penalty of death. Great way to convert, right? Either convert or you're a goner. Kind of an interesting way of influencing people. And leading to events such as the massacre of Verdun. He reached the height of his power in 800 when he was crowned Emperor of the Romans by Pope Leo. Here's the tie-in to the holidays. When was he crowned Emperor of the Romans? Christmas Day at Old St. Peter's Basilica in Rome in the year 800. Charlemagne has been called the father of Europe, Pater Europae in Latin, as he united most of Western Europe for the first time since the classical era of the Roman Empire and united parts of Europe that had never been under Frankish or Roman rule. His rule spurred the Carolingian Renaissance, a period of energetic cultural and intellectual activity within the Western Church. The Eastern Orthodox Church, of course, based in Constantinople, viewed Charlemagne less favorably due to his support of the Filioque, and the popes having preferred him as emperor over the Byzantines' first female monarch, Irene of Athens. These and other disputes led to the eventual later split of Rome and Constantinople in the Great Schism of 1054. Charlemagne died in 814 and was laid, I keep wanting to say 1814, I got to get that in, 814, was laid to rest in Aachen Cathedral in his imperial capital of Aachen. He actually married at least 4 times and had 3 legitimate sons who lived to adulthood, but only the youngest of them, Louis the Pious, survived to succeed him. He also had numerous illegitimate children by concubines. My question to you, but first I have to preface it. There was a very famous contemporary actor known for his role in radio before television really began to dominate the entertainment scene, and subsequently in television, Richard Boone. You also see him in movies from time to time. There is a direct connection between Charlemagne and the acting career of Richard Boone. What is that connection? Charlemagne and the acting career of Richard Boone. That is question number 3. There you have our 3 trivia questions for the day. Again, listen to the bumper music at the end of the show today. If 2 or more of you get the same number of questions correct, identifying that bumper music is in fact the tiebreaker. By now, I'm sure you know how to win. Get your answers to the 3 questions to me by noon on Monday. You can email me at mbrever@eastcastleplace.com, or you can phone me at 963-8425 and leave a message. I know I gave you that email address and the phone number way too fast. Call the front desk. They'll give it to you. Or you can write down your answers on a slip of paper, slide it under my door, or you can write them down on a slip of paper, ask the receptionist downstairs to put them in my mailbox. Get them to me by noon on Monday. That's your destination. Get your answers to my desk by noon on Monday. Maybe you will be in the winner's circle next week, just like Teresa Sundberg is this week. Well, that's our show. I want to thank the management of Channel 955 right here, ECTV at East Castle Place. Our president of ECTV, Tyler Gudex, our executive producer, Laura Wengler, my producer, cameraman, and behind the scenes jack of all trades, Scott McFerrin, and of course my artistic director does a lot of research for me on some of the questions I do, Cooper Ledvina. I want to thank all of them. I also want to thank you for allowing us into your home for this half hour every week. I hope you're having a great time with this show. I know we are. I also hope you're keeping a little bit of a calmness about you as we get closer and closer to the holidays. Regardless of whether we're in a pandemic or not, this is always a very, very hectic time of year, and I hope you're bearing with it. I'm your host and quiz master, Mike Brever. Again, that's our show for the week. Thanks for inviting us in. I hope to see you again next week. Until then, I ask you all to please be safe, be smart, and please be patient. We will all be together again soon enough to enjoy that wonderful East Castle Place hospitality. So long, everybody.